2 in the morning. You're still answering your 30th work email of the day. Your eyes burn, your brain feels fried, and there's only one thought looping through your head. I got nothing done today. But for most of human history, people never had that thought. In 1966, a University of Chicago anthropologist traveled into the African desert to live with a group of Juhowansi hunter-gatherers. He went there to test what everyone thought was obvious, that primitive humans spent every waking moment struggling to survive, constantly hungry, constantly desperate. But after crunching the numbers, even he was shocked. These people, who had no writing system and wore animal hides, spent only 3 to 5 hours a day gathering food. In an entire week, their total work rarely exceeded 20 hours. By 2 in the afternoon, they were done. The paper was called The Original Affluent Society, and it sent shockwaves through anthropology. Because before that, almost everyone accepted the philosopher Thomas Hobbes' famous description of prehistoric life: solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Anthropologist Marshall Salins looked at the evidence and said, no, they were doing just fine.
So that raises a question. If they weren't working all day, what were they doing with the other 15 hours? Let's try to reconstruct an ordinary day from 30,000 years ago. You wake up. Not because an alarm clock screams at you, not because you're already late. You wake up because your body is ready. The fire still holds a little warmth from the night before. You grab a piece of leftover roasted meat, exchange a few casual words with the people beside you. No clocking in, no manager, no must be online by 9. Now, if today's a hunting day, a few people head out together. But it doesn't look like the movies. Human beings are actually among the planet's greatest endurance hunters. Our secret weapon isn't speed, it's sweat. We're one of the few animals capable of cooling our entire bodies while moving. So hunting wasn't usually a dramatic sprint for survival. It was more like a slow marathon. You follow tracks. You keep walking. The animal keeps running. And eventually, under the relentless heat, it collapses from exhaustion. 3 or 4 hours later, job done. And if a large animal was caught a couple days ago, you might not even bother hunting today. Linguist Daniel Everett spent years living with the Piraha people in the Amazon rainforest. And he noticed something remarkable. Their language contains no precise equivalent of our elaborate past and future tenses. They don't store huge food reserves. When they catch something, the village eats. When the food's gone, it's gone. If they don't catch anything, they rest. From a modern perspective, that sounds reckless. No planning, no preparation, no 5-year strategy. But maybe that's much closer to our brain's original operating system, living in the present, not borrowing anxiety from 3 days in the future. By 2 or 3 in the afternoon, everything required for survival is finished. So what happens next? Nothing. And that's the point. Someone sits beneath a tree and watches clouds drift by. Someone spends hours polishing a stone. Someone strings shells into a necklace. Not because it improves productivity, not because it increases survival odds, just because it looks beautiful. Evolutionary anthropologist Robin Dunbar estimated that humans can maintain stable social relationships with roughly 150 people. Coincidentally, or maybe not, that's about the size of many traditional tribes. So the most important activity of the afternoon wasn't work. It was conversation, talking, joking, telling stories, grooming one another's hair, strengthening bonds. In a world without banks, insurance companies, or legal systems, your relationships were your safety net. Back then, idle chatter and shared laughter weren't distractions. They were necessities. But the most fascinating part came after sunset. In 2014, a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences tracked conversations within hunter-gatherer communities throughout the day. During daylight hours, people mostly discussed practical things: where to find food, where to travel, which plants were available. But at night, gathered around the fire, something changed. 81% of conversations became stories. Stories about ancestors, stories about myths, stories that made everyone burst out laughing. Human culture itself may have emerged from evenings like these, moments when people were fed, safe, warm, and free to talk about things that had nothing to do with survival. And here's another thing. They weren't obsessing over getting exactly 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. Before electric lighting, humans often slept in 2 phases: 4 hours of sleep, then a period of quiet wakefulness, talking, thinking, watching the darkness, and then another 4 hours of sleep, 4 hours of work, 6 hours of wandering, socializing, creating, and daydreaming, 8 hours of sleep. If there's such a thing as a genetically programmed ideal day, this might be pretty close. So what happened? Who took that life away? About 10,000 years ago, something occurred that we now celebrate as one of humanity's greatest achievements: the agricultural revolution. But evolutionary biologist Jared Diamond once made a deeply uncomfortable claim. He called agriculture the worst mistake in the history of the human race. Archaeologists have compared the skeletons of early farmers with those of hunter-gatherers, and the results aren't pretty. Farmers were generally shorter. Their teeth were worse. Their diets became less diverse. Years of bending over crops left many with arthritis and spinal problems. And in many cases, they lived shorter lives. Historian Yuval Noah Harari put it even more brutally. We did not domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated us. Because once you start farming, you can't leave. The field owns your schedule. The harvest owns your future. The population grows, but individuals become chained to a patch of land. Then come rulers, then taxes, then bureaucracy. And somewhere along the way, humanity invents a new idea: work. For the first time, your time no longer belongs entirely to you. It becomes a resource, something that can be bought, controlled, extracted. From that moment on, the easy 15-hour workweek disappeared, and humanity began its long descent into a future where many people would spend 90,000 hours of their lives working. The problem is that our brains never fully caught up. The brain inside your skull is still largely the same brain that wandered African grasslands hundreds of thousands of years ago. But now, we've forced it into an environment that demands 8 straight hours of concentration, staring at symbols on screens, processing abstract information all day long. So you blame yourself for procrastinating. You blame yourself for lacking discipline. You blame yourself for wanting to scroll, wander off, or stare out the window. But from an evolutionary perspective, that might not be a flaw at all. It might be a signal. A 300,000-year-old alarm system deep inside your body, desperately trying to tell you, something about this way of living feels wrong. Now, we're obviously not going to throw away our phones and run into the forest with a spear, but there are 2 things we can do. First, stop measuring your worth by productivity. This era is filled with people trying to convince you that you're incomplete. You need a newer phone, a bigger title, more money, more followers, more everything. And only then will you be enough.
Seeing through that illusion and deciding for yourself what enough means is the first step toward reclaiming your time. Second, waste time on purpose. The next time you spend an entire afternoon lying in a park watching clouds drift overhead, or sitting with a friend talking about absolutely nothing important, and that guilty voice appears, "I didn't accomplish anything today." Cut it off immediately. Because this is what humans were built for. You're not wasting time. You're feeding something deeper. Your curiosity, your relationships, your humanity. And that may matter far more than answering 10 more emails. Deep inside your mind lives a hunter from 300,000 years ago. And he's watching you at 2 in the morning, still chasing deadlines and KPIs, a little confused, a little concerned. And he leans over and asks, "The fire is lit. The food is cooked. The tribe is safe. So tell me, what is it you're still running after?"